Oh, thank you. Hi. How's it going? Thank you for giving me your lunch. I think that's fantastic. All right, so I wanted to, before I jumped into anything, I wanted to tell you a little story about how I actually got involved with AI and got to kind of spend time with it. And it actually started when I was first got here. It was the second semester, and I was struggling to find a place to live in Paris. And I don't know if anybody's experienced that here. I'm sure you have. But I was struggling to find somewhere to live, and so I was jumping from Airbnb to Airbnb. And I was in the 16th, and we were in this apartment, and I was sharing a room with three other people in the same apartment. And one day I actually met this particular gentleman. His name is Tony, and he's an Italian guy, and he's getting his PhD. And we got to talking a little bit about my research in AI. Then he told me he was also doing research in AI as well. But he was actually doing it from an economic standpoint. What would happen? What would the economy look like after AI took all of our jobs? How would we fix capitalism if AI and robots started doing things for us? And so we had this great conversation. And he looks at me and he goes, do you want to see it? And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I do AI research here at Paris 8, the Paris 8, the school here. And he goes, do you want to see it? And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, AI, do you want to see it? And I'm like, sure, absolutely. So I ended up meeting him, and I met him, and we go into this building, and it's this long white hallway, and he has to give me card access, right? And we start to, it's okay, thank you. We start going down this hallway, and what's fascinating about it is I hear this buzz and hum. It's like all these servers, this big, powerful computer. And as I get closer, it's getting a little louder. And we walk through this door here, and it just scans to get in. And I was like taken back a little bit. I go through, and I think a big room full of computers, you'd be warm, right? It was cool. It was like 60 degrees. And I look in, and I see this. I'm like, holy, just servers for days, and this huge computer right in the center of it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I was geeking, right? And so he goes, go up and talk to it. You can talk to it. And I'm like, really? Okay, all right. And I walk up to the big screen, and it tells me, he goes, hi, Patrick. And I'm like, it knew me. He goes, we've been actually trying to reach you. And I go, really? And then it started to go into this. Concerning your vehicle's extended warranty, you should have received a notice in the mail. And I was like, holy crap, this is the robocaller. This is the robocaller that's been calling me. I'm telling you this because it's not a true story. Tony is a real person. He is doing research in economics. But this particular thing is not what it is. This is just what I thought it was. I thought AI was this big room full of computers, this big screen that only a few people had access to, and it's just not true. But, a lot of people also think that's AI. This robot is going to come take us down. The scarier one that I personally like is this guy. And if you want to dip into the reality of AI robots that are actually doing art, this is actually the real one right here. And this is Ada. She actually makes art as well. It's very, very famous. But what's unique about this is that there's only one of her, and only a few people have access to her. And all of this conversation about AI has been like just taking off. People have been talking about it everywhere. I think everybody's heard about AI recently, right? Right? Yeah, possibly. I know you have. Yeah, it's your thesis, yeah. And so, but what AI, the big shift for AI is actually this. This is AI. It's actually just a command line. It's a search bar. And basically all you do is you plug in a prompt in order to work with AI. The big thing about this is that it's not a robot. There's one of a kind. Now millions of people can tap into this thing. Anybody can be involved with AI because of this access that you can tap through your phone. And I think that is absolutely a big, big shift. So I was quite shocked, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is real AI. But let me introduce myself and how I actually got started with AI. I'm actually a photographer by trade. I got my bachelor's in photography at the University of Houston. And I've been working on my visual language for years. I've been taking photographs and really working with images. I've studied it. And one of the main things with me that I was really concerned about is if I could take my practice and translate it into artificial intelligence, is this going to rule me? Is this going to be like it going to create for me and then I have to follow AI, or can I guide it? I found out that you could guide it and that you could make work. But I was not just interested in myself, I was more curious about other people too. And I wanted to see if anybody was out there that's actually putting together real work, showing their work, and actually being in the market with artificial intelligence. And so this particular article was the one that really piqued my interest. And it was a particular sale of a piece that was done by artificial intelligence. And the marketing was spectacular. There was like, oh, AI is making art. And I was just like, what? And we don't need an artist. And then it sells for $432,000 in 2018. $432,000. That's a big shift. And when you get that kind of money moving around in the market, something's going on. And I had to know. I was just absolutely curious. And so I just so happened to be reading this particular book at the time when this article came out, and he was talking about Rise of Robots. And it's a really good book. He actually looks into the future, and he's very pessimistic about what he thinks robots are going to be doing and how it's going to replace all of us. And he's like cautioning everyone, like, hey, watch out for AI. And so I took that inspiration, and I dove in a little bit. And so what I'm going to do today is kind of take you through a couple of things. Has new technology changed image making before in art? And it has. And how are artists and photographers adapting their skills? So I'm going to show you a few artists. And then I'm actually going to show you what it actually looks like to work with AI and use language in order to guide AI. This is actually the first time a machine really shook up the art world in the mid-1800s, photography. Photography jumped in and started to render images way more accurately than a painter or anybody that was drawing could do. People were very, very angry. They were like, no, this is not art. This is the closest thing to etching and sketching. It has no emotion. There's no soul behind it. It's just a machine. You hear that, right? And Charles Baudelaire was awesome to read. If you ever want to read about him going on and on about photography, it's a really good read. But I was curious about what people were saying about it now, like about AI. Were they just as angry about it? And absolutely, it's true. You see people here, AI won an art contest and artists are furious. Artists are revolting against art on ArtStation. Artists are hating on AI art, and here's why. And they are mad. And they've started their own movement. And so you see this everywhere. I think it's absolutely hilarious. This is really funny. That is really funny. Partly due to the fact is if you look at AI art, they never can quite get the right amount of fingers. And sometimes the nose is a little bit off. And so this, really funny. I was like, nod the cap on that one. AI artists in their practice. So we're going to jump into some of the artists, and I'm going to start looking at the one that sold for a little over $400,000. And this is the Obvious Art Collective. This is a Parisian-based art group, and they're basically three people that actually build art. And what they use is a generative adversarial network. It's an AI-type network that develops and makes different pieces. They're most famous for this particular one, which is the Bellamy family. And as you can see, is like I was talking about the weird hands, GAN art, and we call it that often when we talk about AI, they get the proportions a little wrong. They don't necessarily nail it, but they had a really cool concept, which is this family. And they put together these portraits that were all based off of classical portrait paintings. And they taught AI with this little data set. And this particular piece is the one that actually sold for $432,000. But as you dive into Obvious, they actually have a few issues that come along with this story. It's not as cut and dry like AI made this. They have a couple of things that brought up some issues, and it's around authorship. One of the first things is around authorship. AI is being built open sourced. Most of this stuff is happening in this website called GitHub. And people are going in and sharing code and developing the code, and they're sharing it between each other, and they're basically working on it together. Obvious, they teamed up with a gentleman by the name of Robbie Barrett, who's actually very well known for his GAN art. When they marketed this, and I'm going to talk about this, they said AI did it. The robot did it. We didn't do anything. We just hit enter. And it's just not true. AI needs a data set. It needs images. You need to feed those images. Then you have to ask AI what to make. Then you have to work through different renditions. You also have to train it. And so what they were doing with Robbie Barrett up here was Robbie Barrett was developing the code for them. And guess what they did? They sold it for $400,000 and didn't give him any credit. And so the authorship question is pretty interesting. But this also ties right into sourcing training data. One of the ways that AI gets its training data is they have these programs called scrapers. And the scraper goes through the internet and basically pulls images off the internet, pulls an image data set so it can train the model. And there's some questions about that. Is it getting your image? My image? I have copyright on my stuff, so are you training your stuff with my stuff? Or are you just using open source stuff? There's a lot of questions, and a lot of this stuff hasn't really been answered yet. A lot of this stuff, it's so new, they're like, you've been training what? Hold on, we got to fix the law, and no one knows what to do with it because these images aren't necessarily direct representations or direct copies. So is it a copyright infringement? I don't know. I think the next few years are going to tell. And so the black box effect is the next one. This is where bias comes into play. When you have a scraper that goes through the internet, you're basically taking a snapshot of all the images that exist on the internet. And I'm sure there's some bias that exists on the internet. Am I right? And then you teach AI that bias. And then the crazy thing about the black box effect is that once it has a statistical model that takes the precedent, it kind of stays there, and it's hard to unlearn it. And so it gets stuck in that kind of thing. So the bias is ingrained, and it's hard to train out. And so the black box effect is something that they talk about often, and it is an issue with AI. And then the marketing. That marketing thing is, I wrote a blog on it this morning because I was just so, it just gets me. It's because AI marketing is all about, the robot did it. This robot did it, and AI algorithms are going to take our jobs. But realistically, what the truth is that you have humans working with computer programs to train it. And then you also have to really work with it in order to get an end result that's acceptable to your vision. And so in their marketing, they just said, robot did this, and robot did this, and basically oversold the idea and didn't tell anybody what was really going on. That they were highly involved in developing the code, highly involved in the training, highly involved in the production of the process, and AI wasn't doing it alone, but they marketed it that way. You see a problem with that? I do. So what I wanted to do was look at other artists. And I started to look for other people that were doing similar things, but were pushing the bounds of the technology. He's one gentleman that agreed to talk to me when I was doing my research. And his name is Rashid Haq. He's from California. And I call him the techno-anthropologist. He is just one of these guys that just grabs new technology and just makes stuff. He works with LiDAR cameras. He works with all kinds of different things that most people aren't even using. And he's making images and work with it. And one of the things he was using was a computer system, the GAN system that I was talking about, like the Obvious Group, to make his work. And I was like, okay, let's talk. Let's see. This was his project. Actually, this is a different project. I'm out of order, but there's another model. Has anybody heard of ChatGPT? Yeah. You've heard of ChatGPT? Yeah. I love ChatGPT. He's my best friend. But he was able to turn that little language software to interpret images. Oh, that was pretty cool. And then it came up with these prose. And so he would do this photographic process. This is light painting. And basically he takes someone in the dark and he does a little flashlight, and he creates these weird images and stuff like that. You can't really see them on here. Maybe you can see them on the computer over there. But then he feeds them into AI to ask it to interpret it, and it comes up with these little titles. And so the stream of shadows gliding in the darkness raised his head like a child at the grave. The cross appeared in the dark with a stone. I think that's interesting. AI came up with that. He didn't come up with it. And he lined them up almost as if they were poetry. And I thought that was quite interesting. And an interesting way to use artificial intelligence. This is his Gann work. These are the portraits he was doing that he called the human trials. Black and white's not doing that well on here. I have some color ones later. I'll show you. But these are interesting because these are complete conglomerations of faces. And you go to his website, he did this really early before the other guys did, using the same AI. And his experimentation kind of gave me a look in what people were doing on the early days of AI. Now he is somebody that I think is really exciting. This is Boris Eldagsen. He is a German artist that I spent 40 minutes on the phone with, and I wouldn't let him go. He was like, I have somewhere to go. I'm like, no. We're going to continue this conversation. But he is a photographer and filmmaker who's got a master's in fine art. He's trained under some really, really good photographers. One of his, is anybody familiar with Roger Ballin? Anybody? You're going to see an image here in a second. But Roger Ballin is somebody that he did workshops with and really worked hand in hand to develop his art. And his early photography and stuff is really, really interesting. His approach to art is very etheric. He's trying to go towards the grotesque. He's trying to make you uncomfortable with his art. And to me, I'm like, I like that. You know what I mean? The raw stuff. But he's doing things with the prompts that I just think are just so fascinating. These are some of his images that he was using in DALL-E. Has anybody heard of that one, DALL-E? Yeah. So DALL-E is these images, but his experimentation, I think, was really, really telling, and it reveals a little bit about what the capabilities of AI is. Right? You can do a couple of things with AI. You can take this image and feed it in and say, make me variations of it, or you can describe it with your words. Okay? And so he did a couple of them. And this is image to image. Right? I thought that was pretty interesting. It seemed to capture, kind of the essence of that photo from Roger Ballin. And then this is text to image. This is him describing it. I'm so sorry you can't see over there.
No, I can look here.
Okay, you can. Okay, I did that on purpose. Yeah. I'm just kidding. But I thought these were awesome. I was just like, wow, the twins. And these are just a great example of what AI can do when you describe something and you try to capture the heart of something. And we'll talk about how to frame those prompts here in a minute. This is the next one. This is the one he said was not very successful. This is an image by Brian Griffin. And it's a Construction Time Again, the Depeche Mode cover. And Brian Griffin is very, very famous. He's a photographer from the 1980s. And anybody who's anybody had a cover photo by Brian Griffin. And so he did Depeche Mode. Name a band from the 80s, and they have a Brian Griffin photo on there. And this is an image that he wanted to try to do because you had the Matterhorn in the back. You had this guy with the sledgehammer. But then let's see what AI thought about that one. Image to image. It's a little rough, right? I don't know. It kind of got the Matterhorn. But what are these? It's just kind of missing a little bit. And then the text to image, where he tried to describe it. And these are his. As you could see, it's not going to nail it every single time, right? You really have to work with AI in order to get a result that's actually acceptable to your original vision. Okay, well, let's go back. Now, this is his latest work. This is really interesting to me. I think this work is kind of pushing the level of portraiture, pushing the level of what you can do with AI. And what's interesting is, everybody heard of Midjourney? Okay, Midjourney is a really famous one right now. It's the one I have. This is the one I use. Most of my slides that you've seen today are done in Midjourney. But what he's doing is he's developing portraits like in a program like Midjourney. Anybody familiar with Stable Diffusion? That's the other one. Stable Diffusion is the big one. Stable Diffusion has a really cool way of controlling the image. You can in-paint and out-paint. What that means is you can add things into an image live, and then you can take it out live, and then it reworks the image for you using AI. And he loves that one because he can really work it. But he actually developed his stuff in Stable Diffusion and then plugged it in, image to image, into DALL-E. So he's using both at the same time. But the interesting thing about him is that, does anybody know what NSFW content is? Not safe for work, right? And so there are filters in these things that will not allow you to reproduce famous people or anything that's like offensive, not safe for work, like pornography, just any of that kind of stuff. But he was curious to see if he could. And he wanted to push the levels of grotesque. So he has these really long prompts. He's using medical terminology in order to kind of sneak in the back door. He says he gets kicked out all the time. They restrict him for a week, and then he gets back in and he works it again. And I just think that is hilarious. But that's what artists do, right? We push the edges, and we try to figure something out. We try to do something that no one else is doing. And I think with Boris, he was really done a nice job with that. And this is the show he put together. He just showed, he had a solo show, and he's selling his work using AI work. And he's making really unique, really interesting work. And I highly recommend you go to his website and check out his work. He's my new best friend. He doesn't know it yet, but I'm a big fan. I had him sign a T-shirt. So anyway, that's Boris. And so let's talk about the shifting image making landscape. So it's here, obviously. People are making stuff with it. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for anybody that's a creative that does digital work, right? A lot of us, we have our own personal art that we do, but we also have a professional side to it, right? A lot of us do, and we want to know if that's going to translate or if these AI is going to jump in. So one of my backgrounds is in business. And so one of the things that I look at is the diffusion and the adoption cycle that's done by Rogers. And in my research, I looked at the adoption curve, and it's a bell curve. And here I was looking at AI in comparison to this model because I was trying to figure out where we were with this. Are we still kind of really early with this technology, or is it on the cusp of actually exploding? Right? Right now, the innovators were, those guys on GitHub. We've moved into this thing that's called the early adopters, where it's like people like Obvious Art Group and Rochette. And then now you're in this early majority. We're like right here on this edge right here, where there's now access for millions of people to jump into these systems and use it. You can do it right now. And you can do it for free, actually. They give you a little trial, so they hook you, and they sell it to you for once a month. But what's interesting about that is before, and the reason why I say the innovators and why we've made that shift is because remember Ada we had earlier? That was one robot. Only a few people had access to. Now, millions of people have access to it, and they can do it on their phone. That's a big shift. It's a huge shift. And then you also have a big thing where now it's winning art contests. People are showing work, and okay, it's here. It's about to shift. And so I did a little research. I tied it all in my thesis, if you want to read it. I have multiple copies. I didn't mean to make that many, but you can... I made the case that we're now in this space and now in this phase to where the technology is good enough. It can actually produce really good work, and it's going to be making an impact in work. And so I have a feeling we're going to be very, very much like this with AI. But will it replace artists? And so I remember ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT what AI art jobs would be replaced. And this is what they said. Photo editor, logo designer, graphic designer, web designer, colorist, interior designer, animator, fashion designer, art appraiser, I'll let that sink in. Hold on. When I read that, I was like, ChatGPT, don't talk to me like that. You're insulting me right now. This is NSFW content. That kind of shook me a little bit, right? I'm sure a lot of things changed too when photography came into place. You had painters that used to make a lot of money doing portraits, and then all of a sudden a camera came along, and anybody can get a portrait at a fair. It takes 5 minutes. I think we're at one of those moments right now. And so I then said, I had to kind of tell people, I had to kind of think to myself, okay, I'm a philosopher kind of. I read a lot of philosophy. And so I had to come up with some quotes to make me feel better. And so I come up with a quote that says, AI should be looked at as an enhancement to our creative abilities and not a replacement. An enhancement, not a replacement. I don't think AI is going to replace us. They're going to need creative people that know how to use it and have vision to guide AI in order to make new things. So I don't think it's going to replace us. And then I want to encourage you a little bit too, is that your skills do translate to AI. And here's what possibly could be in the future with AI. And so what I did is I asked ChatGPT what AI jobs are going to be out there. And this is what it said. AI art director, AI artist, AI curator, AI animator, AI game designer, AI graphic designer, AI product designer, and AI photographer. So this is what it thinks.
Fashion design as well?
I think so. Oh yeah, I didn't. It was lying to me, I guess. I only said the top 10, and there was a few in there, the 2 in there that just didn't really apply to the arts. There's some other things that are coming too, like AI coders, and so on. So there's some big shifts. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of different jobs that are going to be available in this field, but you've got to know how to use it. And so I'm going to take you through how to build a prompt, okay? And you do it in 3 ways. I'm doing good on time. So I'm going to take you through the prompt, and there's 3 things you have to think about. One is subject matter, so it's just basically a description. And so I did a dog running in a grass field. There's my dog running in a grass field, right? Here's the prompt, right? That's all you have to type in. The next thing is you want to stylize it. And this is where actually your training comes in. When you stylize something, you use technique, especially artistic techniques of all kinds. So if you've been working within a field, you know these words. It's design language. You use design language in order to guide this. And so what I did is just a simple thing. I said a pencil drawing. And so there's my dog now. That's a pencil drawing. And then you need a little bit of code, right? You need to know how to tag it at the end with a little bit of code, and then you can start to really work it. And so this is a basic code, and so you have stylizing, you can work within different versions, and so you can really change the end result and really, really work it. So these prompts can get pretty long. Mine are actual real paragraphs. I think I write short stories. But so this is a dog running in grass, pencil drawing, in stylized 500. It drops me into a different version. So now you can actually see that there are some improvements. A little different variation of the same kind of prompt. Now you can kind of get a feel for how you can guide this. If it's not quite to your vision, you can continue to push it, get more iterations, and get a little bit different look. Here are all 3 of them lined up, so now you can get a feel for the different ways you can get different images with the exact same words. You're not just getting one output from AI. You are actually driving AI to get exactly what it is that you're thinking about. So to finish this up, I kind of want to talk about where I stand. Am I pro-AI? Am I pro-human? Believe it or not, I'm both. I think artificial intelligence is a huge innovation. It's going to change everything. However, the way I look at it is that AI is this super capable machine that is only as good as what we ask it to do. So if we don't ask it to do anything that's deep, or we don't come to it with knowledge of history and art, then we're only going to kind of get what the surface level is of AI. I am pro-AI, but I'm also pro-human. I think that cohesion together is really, really important going forward. And I don't want people to lose sight of AI's capabilities and assume that it is intelligent when it isn't. It is smart, but only if you ask it the right questions or ask it to do the right tasks and are informed enough to know that the results aren't necessarily what it is that you want. So for me, going forward, I don't think AI should take over completely all of our jobs. I feel like people and humans need to translate their skills into artificial intelligence, and I think we could have a really, really interesting future with AI. So with that, thank you so much for your time and listening to me today.